Hello, Shannon. How are you?
Doing excellent, sir. Thank you so much for having me on.
So, we got a lot to talk about because you are a busy, busy person. You
A
have
little,
a little
it's
bit,
fun.
you have a book, you have a TV series now. Is there going to be a second season to that?
There is. It'll be out in early August, actually. August 3rd, I believe, is the release date for season two, part one.
Nice. And then you also have your podcast, Into the Fray. So, normally I start out by asking you to talk about your podcast, but let's start out by talking about everything. So let's go into your book first.
Mhm.
Let's talk about that. Tell me a little bit about your book because I have not read that yet. I know it's about Bigfoot.
Yeah, and there's actually two. So we've got Beyond the Fray Bigfoot, and then we've got Beyond the Fray Paramalgamation, which is a word that I kind of created out of my own brain because I didn't know what the heck to name it because it was paranormal stories that just were all over the place. And I was like, okay, well, these are an amalgamation of all these weird things. It was a paramalgamation. So that's how I came up with that title. And so Bigfoot came out first. Did you want to wait? Okay. Good to go.
We're good to go. So
Okay.
hold on, let me get rid of that. So anyway, so your what do you say call it? Paramalgamation.
Perfect. Yep.
Okay,
Paramalgamation. It's a tongue twister.
it is. So that's just a compilation of just a bunch of different things.
Yeah, that's all the kind of the my favorite paranormal encounters for my show are the ones that really you can't really put a label on them. They're just super weird and they're not easily identifiable. Not that really anything is in the paranormal world or Bigfoot, but these are some of my favorite stories that have been shared on the show or just through email or through a private conversation that they didn't want aired on the show. So Paramalgamation was, in fact, all of that put together into Beyond the Fray Paramalgamation. Beyond the Fray Bigfoot came out first. That is obviously Bigfoot Encounters. And then I did throw in a couple of Dogman stories in there. I won't be doing that, or I should say, we won't be doing that, Jeff and I, for Beyond the Fray Bigfoot 2, which I'm collating stories for that. But, when we started this venture, Jeff and I, Beyond the Fray Publishing, we had about 5.5 years of stories and episodes to pull from. So now we're kind of starting from scratch. So it's taken a little bit longer for two to come out than maybe we'd like. But yeah, the books are going great, and the publishing company is going wonderful. We actually just signed Mr. Lon Strickler himself. He's got a few books that he's going to be putting out some second editions for, and also a brand new one that I don't know if I should. I probably can't say the title and what it is quite yet. We'll save that for later. But we've got a number of incredible authors on board, and it just keeps growing. And Into the Fray is coming up on its sixth year. September 2015, I believe, was my first episode, and that was Nick Redfern, which was a cool get for me way back in the day. I was very like, oh my gosh, Nick Redfern, how awesome is this? And going strong 6 years later. And I think that when you really love something that you're doing, yes, it's a whole lot of work to put on a podcast, as you know, but when you love it, it doesn't really feel like work. I look forward to talking to these folks every single week, and I never quite know what's going to come across my headphones when I'm talking to somebody because my favorite thing is to not have a big heads up on what their story is. I prefer when somebody goes, "Hey, saw a Bigfoot. Hey, saw a wolf man, right? Can't say the L. Wolf man, or whatever the situation is. I'd rather even not know the details of such a thing and hear it for the first time when I'm talking to them and recording with them.
You know, and I like that with your podcast because you mentioned in several episodes, you're like, I like to go on tangents. We're all about tangents. And I like that. I like listening to those little offshoots because I had someone tell me once that when you have experiences, they're just little brief blurbs in your life, and they're not always an everyday occurrence.
Yeah, and that's the craziest thing is that these folks that I talk to, they can have an experience that they had 30, 40. So I have had these on that are like 50 years ago. Um, they haven't forgotten a single detail. And that's where you kind of go, well, who have you told this to? And they go, nobody. Or they go, oh, my wife has heard about this story just once and she kind of laughs about it, but I decided not to tell anybody else. And I'm like, oh my gosh, but you chose me to talk to, right? And I really am humbled by that. And it's another thing that keeps me coming back every single week and putting hours in is these people. These people are incredible. And it's not easy, even though, yeah, I don't do this big live show. It's not coast to coast. I'm not, a bad A like George Knapp. But if they're there for me to talk to, I'm going to keep doing this show.
Oh, and you'll never run out of people who want to talk to you because you are very, very popular.
Well, thanks, Jack. It's surprising to me the fact that I do have at this point a backlog of people to talk to, and it's a great problem. It stresses me out because I always want to. I know there's people that I've said, "Hey, let's get you on," and they haven't heard back from me for like 2 months. Because I have a lot going on in my brain, and I haven't quite figured out that foolproof way of organizing everything. And I do still have a normal job. A lot of people may not know that, so just trying to juggle that. And if I could ever do ITF full time, I could easily put on 2, 3 main shows a week, still do the Patreon, and then actually get through this list of folks that I have to talk to who want to share their encounters.
And that's another thing. People don't realize that most podcasters, even ones who are super popular, they have day jobs.
Yeah.
Like I work from a 9 to 5, and then I come home. And luckily, my wife works second shift, so she's not home when I get home. So that gives me time to do what I need to do
Yes.
with this. And if she was home, I'd probably end up spending a lot more time with her than not do this. So that works out perfectly. But hopefully, she doesn't hear that.
Well, no, and you don't mean that in a bad way. You just mean like, hey, since you're not home, I'm gonna be over here doing this thing, right?
Yeah,
Like that's
and it is. It's a
something.
lot of work, and I don't
Yeah.
think people understand, exactly what podcasters do, and especially when you're doing other stuff. Because I'm sure the TV series you did, um, which was on the trail of UFOs, right?
Hmm.
That took up probably how many months of your time just to film that?
Yeah, we would film it in kind of chunks of time. So there'd be 4 days here. We did a massive. It was 11 days on the East Coast. That was our longest trip. And then they came out here. We filmed in Nevada and Arizona. Of course, we did the Area 51 episode. So there was different chunks, like a week here, a week there. The longer trip was the 11. I think it was 11 days for East Coast for the New York City and all of that. And it's fun to see it all come together because I know that, Seth has got this picture in his head when he's filming something. And to me, it seems all backwards. It's not, of course, set up like a fictional TV show. It's completely different. Obviously, we're talking to real people and researchers and people that are very, very serious about the subject, as are we. And it's really cool after filming all this stuff, and it's wild and crazy and fun, and it's out of sequence, at least in my head. I don't know what he's seeing. And then to see the final product and go, okay, dude, that's pretty awesome. You know what you're doing. It's very well done. And I'm very excited for people to see season 2, part 1, Dark Sky. It's going to be really cool. I'm proud of that one.
So where can people find that at? And your book and your podcast while we're on the subject of where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with the show. The documentary is on Amazon Prime right now. You've got season 1 up there. It's still on Prime. Anybody can go on there and check it out, or you can go to smalltownmonsters.com if you want the hard copy DVD, or stream it through another platform, something like that. And intothefrayradio.com is the main page for my podcast. It is, of course, on all of the podcatchers, the usual suspects, and iHeartRadio, Spotify, and YouTube for free. No problems there. And of course, I have the Patreon if people are that into me, which I'm still shocked that anyone is that wants to pay extra for bonus episodes. And we do live, weekly chats on video, and it's kind of fun. We've been doing these paranormal and UFO and Bigfoot video reviews. I think those are some of the biggest hits with people. It's just kind of chatting about some of these strange things that people are capturing on tape. So those are popular.
Nice. So what
Oh,
are
and the
your
books. Sorry, I
uh,
totally spaced it, Jack. I'm sorry. So the books are on Amazon or anywhere that fine books are sold. Yeah, I'm supposed to say that last part, right? That's the big one. Wherever fine books are sold.
right, right. There are bookstores still? What are you talking about?
Yeah, I know. You're like, wait, you go to a bookstore? Hold on a second.
Surprisingly enough, there's a Books a Million in the town I live in, and I've never been in there, but I know there's a bookstore.
It's somewhere, right? It's almost a cryptid now.
It is.
Bookstores, right? It's like
I
seeing a Bigfoot. You're like, oh my gosh, there's one right there.
I don't know if there's a Barnes and Noble anywhere around me.
Real, yeah. You know what? They shut down a couple of them here in Vegas, even, which is pretty terrifying. But Amazon is the big 800-pound gorilla in the room, kind of taking things down. So it
Yeah,
is what it is. That's our culture now.
yes, it is. And the whole coronavirus thing didn't do anything to help that.
No,
It
no,
it
and they were already suffering, right? So yeah, you're right. The COVID thing just dropped a bomb on that big time.
yes. So, what are your thoughts on what the government just came out with on UFOs, saying, "Well, we can't confirm or deny anything."
I mean, I think to us that is some of the best that we've had from the government so far, right? Besides them actually creating something like a Project Blue Book where they're going, okay, well, this is important enough to investigate. At least now they're saying, well, we can't, say it's ours, or we can't say it's a Russian or an alien. I don't think that we'll ever get that. I don't think they'll ever say, well, they're definitely not ours, and they're definitely not Russians, and it's not terrestrial. It is extraterrestrial, off planet. We're talking like little gray dudes or the tall whites, and all these things you've heard are true. I don't think that we're going to get that. It would be amazing, but I'm still hopeful. I think it'd be pretty cool. But to me, honestly, I think well over even maybe 95% of what we are seeing in the skies is military tech. I do think that maybe 90%, maybe 95 is being a little bit dramatic, but it is a very big portion in my head that says this is probably now. Is it back engineered though? That's the question, right? Did we make it? But where did it come from? So that's kind of the cool caveat to me saying that and being kind of the real skeptical Shannon on that is, well, we might have built it, but maybe we did get the tech somewhere else. So then you're pardon me. So then your situation where you've got the ID4 and you've got Will going down to the basement and the hangar door slides open and you've got the craft that's just floating there, right? The anti-gravity situation. You're going, yes, it's real amazing. So, they got that from somewhere.
So, my thoughts on that, well, one, the government's never going to tell us. We're going to actually have to see a spaceship come out of the sky for them to say, yes, there's extraterrestrial life. You just saw it. But I also think after Roswell, so many different inventions came about that I feel that they used that crash and other crashes to reverse engineer a lot of things that we use in technology today. Because we shouldn't be as technologically advanced as we are given the time period we've had.
No, yeah, totally agree. That's where I kind of go, okay, well, you're skeptical about what people are seeing, but yeah, they got it from somewhere, right? I think some of it has to be.
Well, in 19, I want to say 71, I think it was, in an air base in North Dakota. There was a young man who had clearance to this hangar, and there was a plane that had to make an emergency landing into this air base. Well, he happened to have clearance to this hangar, and he walked in, and he saw a stealth bomber in 1972. He then was told very directly and very forwardly, your clearance has been revoked for the next 24 hours. And so he talked to the radar tech the next morning, and the radar tech said the the plane took off, and immediately after it took off, he lost it on his radar. So
Yeah, and that back then would be an unidentified flying object, right?
right,
Because he didn't know what that was. He certainly didn't know what that was, and he wasn't supposed to know what that was. That must be terrifying. Sorry, give me your badge. Goodbye. See you later.
and that was one of the few stories that my father told me from his time in the military.
Oh, that's cool. Oh my goodness, that's awesome.
So
Oh
yeah,
wow.
so they've been doing stuff like that, and then I read a story and I found it was a blip. I've never heard it and seen it any other time, where it leaked out that they made uh, it was called the Son of the Blackbird, and this was about 5 years ago, and it's an unmanned stealth bomber that can go upwards of like Mach 10, and it can be piloted or unpiloted, and they did a
Wow.
lot of tests in um, I want to say Connecticut, and because people were hearing sonic booms over and over and over again, and they didn't know why, and the government's like, we don't have anything up there.
You're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Yep. You
Oh.
guys are hearing stuff. Going crazy.
So yeah, I do think that unless something happens where a UFO comes down from the sky and says, "Hey, we're here," they're never going to tell us either way. But I do think this was a big step for them to say, "Yes, we can't confirm nor deny," because that pretty much means we confirm the fact that there's extraterrestrials.
Right, because they love to deny. I mean,
Oh
they've
yeah.
been right there to deny it in a heartbeat every other time. That's why it's pretty cool. They're going, well, we're just gonna mum the word on this. We don't know. We don't know what to tell you. That's great.
So I'm going to open the call lines up so anybody who wants to call in can call in and ask you whatever they want to ask you. Uh,
Sounds good.
and then we're going to continue talking. So let's talk about Into the Fray. I really enjoy this podcast because you do have so many interesting people on. I just finished listening to the episode where the girl saw a werewolf.
Mm-hmm.
That is interesting to me. And one thing struck me is not odd, but just very truthful. Like you get a lot of these people who say I want to have these encounters, but then they have an encounter and they're like, oh shit, I had an encounter.
Yeah. Yeah. And in some cases, and I feel confident in saying this because it has been this way. It's not often, but in some cases, it actually ruins their lives. In one way, shape, or form, their lives are altered in a really negative way. For you mentioned a wolf man, a dog man. Another instance that comes to mind is the Beast in the Trees episode. This happened like 20 years ago to this gentleman, and he moved away from this city. And he now, even when he goes from his house to his garage, which is, that you have to walk outdoors from one building to another, is he says it's 4 feet. And he's terrified to do it. And he even still carries his gun on his side. And he admits what he essentially experienced. A gun wouldn't probably do anything. That's a whole long story. But that long ago, and he is still that terrified of something, and he can't walk 4 feet because he's in open air in this 4 feet from the house to the garage. So in some cases, I would hazard to say that, of course, yes, these people want to go, like you said, oh shit, I would rather that never have happened to me. And granted, this particular person wasn't looking for that. He was just riding his bike home one night. and had something essentially. It's literally a beast in the trees. He never saw it. He saw like a massive shadow, and it was jumping um, impossible distances, this massive, massive thing. And it was taking the trees all the way over and bending them to the ground when it was hitting or alighting upon the next tree, right? So that's why it was so terrifying. And that is nothing that we can readily identify in any way, shape, or form as being a normal animal. And this poor guy's going, my brain is saying, what's the biggest bird that could, be in this tree, right? An ostrich. Well, how in the hell is an ostrich going to get, first of all, where I am in the middle of the city right here? Not impossible, but it's not going to be up in a tree jumping. I can't remember the distance. 30, 40, 50 feet, something like that. I can't remember. I'm the worst with the details like that unless I really go back and listen. An impossible distance. And he's like, well, that's not a damn ostrich. So I'm in a whole lot of trouble. And he felt really uh, like he was in mortal danger. So that stuck with him after all those years.
That kind of sounds like what they've been calling the Glimmer Man, like that predator type creature that's been talked about lately, which is rather a new phenomenon.
Right. Essentially a predator type of a thing, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And that seems to be more prevalent now. And I don't know what that means. Where are they coming from? Why are people seeing them more? Or are people finally catching on to shows like ours and they're hearing them more, so they're just sharing them more? Which one is it?
That could be it. Or the fact that all of last year, I mean, everybody was in lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of tension. There was a lot of just uneasiness and unrest. And I think when you get that much energy flowing, it's going to do something with the paranormal. It's going to bring that out, or it's going to, you'll see it more.
That's a really good point, Jack. I would say give it another few months or maybe a year or maybe 10 because it takes people that long sometimes to decide to tell their story. But I bet you're right that we're going to get a whole lot of stories coming just out of this past year of COVID quarantine where people are having to see Shadow Man, Hat Man, trolls or gnomes or any of these little random weird things that unfortunately people see in their homes, which I always say is the worst thing because that's your house. That's where you live. It's your safe space. If you go out to a haunted location, you hope, well, most people do if they go there with gear, they're hoping for an experience and then you can leave that location and hopefully not take anything home with you. But when something's going on in your house, that's a big bag of nope right there. It's not right, and they need to respect boundaries, these things, and they don't.
Oh, yeah. No, I completely agree. And when I bought my house, um, me and my wife, we had a long conversation on if we actually wanted to buy this house or not because we had a great deal on it, but the previous owner had died and her parents were the ones who actually technically owned the house. And the realtor was her brother-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I got this house. I can give you a great deal on it, but it comes with all the stuff that she left.
Yeah.
So we had to think long and hard about that because what if her spirit was attached to something she
Right.
didn't cross over? And fortunately, we haven't really had anything crazy happen. I mean, I've misplaced some stuff, or I think I misplaced stuff, but it always shows back up within like a few minutes. So I don't know.
But does it show back up in a spot that you would never put it?
No, I don't think I've ever. I'm kind of forgetful sometimes, and I'm in a hurry, or I'll put something down, but I don't think it's ever been like that for me. My wife, I'm not sure. She doesn't really. She gets more creeped out by that than I do. So
Yeah. Interesting. Oh, I'll have to keep up with you on that. You might actually have an active spot there, huh?
that might, especially because we're gonna start doing some more construction to the house. So
Oh.
we'll see. We're gonna be doing some stuff. So we'll find out then.
Mm-hmm.
I actually did live in a haunted apartment, a haunted building actually for 5 years.
They're in Florida somewhere?
No, in Illinois.
Oh,
Yeah, I back in my younger years, I decided to open up a tattoo studio, and I bought a building and I renovated the upstairs because it was dilapidated, and then all sorts of weird freakiness started happening. Not to me, not to me. I mean, I would hear people walking up the stairs that weren't there, but 9 times out of 10, it happened to my friends that were hanging out there. So I
that's
don't know.
interesting.
I don't know if we called him Mr. Bubbles, and we knew who he was. He was actually the owner of the building, the original owner of the building, who died in the apartment next to the building. There was like the building was set up where there was a stairwell with connecting upstairs. So there was a hallway, and then your apartment to the left, apartment to the right, and he had set it up where it was his law office, and then there was a cigar shop in the back, and then on the other side of it was his apartment. And apparently, he died in the bathtub.
Uh-oh.
And I think a lot of that was whenever my friends would help me, we were remodeling, and we didn't have a plumbing up there yet. But the other apartment had a bathtub that was still, and apparently he died in the bathtub, and they would go in there and like, yeah, we're gonna just pee in the bathtub.
Did he die of natural causes or?
I think so. I think because he was old when he
Okay.
died. Yeah.
All right.
So
Because, you know, if somebody takes their life, then obviously there's a lot of sadness that can kind of permeate a location, right?
right,
Why did you call him Mr. Bubbles?
just a name my friend came up with. Yeah.
Okay, so that's interesting. So the friend came up with the name. You never got picked on, but the friends did. So maybe he just hated the fact that they came up with this name, Mr. Bubbles, for him, right?
Maybe. Maybe. So, what kind of crazy paranormal experiences have you had or encounters with cryptids?
So I kind of call my inception story my shadow person experience, which was back when I was around 12 years old, and it's funny because I said how long it takes people to tell their story, and I didn't actually voice mine until I was on Sasquatch Chronicles as a co-host, and that was 30 years after the fact or 20, whatever it was at that point. Anyhow, my parents had divorced. My father bought a cabin in Utah, just a getaway cabin. And we would go up there all the time, especially summers. It would be longer trips, obviously. And a couple things that we did most days was either fish or go four wheeling. And on this particular day, it was summertime. We were on one of the longer trips, and it was beautiful outside, no clouds, uh, just beautiful day. So we decided to go out, me and my two brothers. My dad was down in Cedar City, which is about a half hour drive down the mountain there. He was in Cedar City. So I decided since it was a little warm out, I wasn't going to wear my helmet. And this is important. And anybody that has ridden dirt bikes and four wheelers will know if you're wearing your helmet with those goggles, they're plastic. You can't really see that great out of those
Oh, they
things.
suck.
They are terrible. They're stifling, it's hot, and you can't really see, but they are essential if you have especially people riding in front of you and it's safe. Well, my dad wasn't around, so Shannon's hot and I don't feel like wearing it, so I didn't. No helmet, no goggles. And this will come into play here in a minute. Uh, we're riding up and down dirt roads. It's set up in a grid pattern. We're hauling ass down one of these dirt roads. And I'm taking up the back end here. And my brothers are ahead of me. Again, don't have my goggles on. Nothing's blocking me. So I'm hanging back so I don't get a face full of dust and I'm not eating their dust. And at one point, I look off into the wooded area to my right. And if you've been up around Duck Creek, Utah, then you know that it's very different from Ohio or parts of Florida I've been to. There's not a lot of ground brush. There's a little bit, it's pretty open. You have these aspen trees, and I could see really well. And about 30 feet into the wood line, I saw four completely black as black, even darker than that, completely devoid of light. It's like they were just just sucking in any blackness that they could find. The light couldn't find them, and it's bright sunshine day, middle of the day, and they are keeping up with me on my four-wheeler. They are right next to me, paralleling me, and they are moving their arms and legs, which I instantly thought with my 12-year-old brain, that is really weird. You guys aren't from around here. Why in the hell do you need to move your arms and legs? I didn't, it did not register why that was going on. And they are probably around 6 feet tall, not super skinny, not super big, pretty normal looking, except for the fact that they were completely black, head to toe, no definition whatsoever. Couldn't see ears, couldn't see anything like that. So I watched them for about a 5 count, which is a pretty good little tick of time, really. You know, 5 count. I have to. I'm still going on my four-wheeler, hauling ass. I got to check my path. I look forward, make sure I'm not going to flip over a log or something. I look back, and they are completely gone. And that that of course stuck with me. It did scare me enough to where I didn't go riding for a few days, which is very strange. Uh, I caught up quickly to my brothers. I said, "Let's go back. I want to go back. I don't know what I said. I'm hungry, whatever." And they said, "All right, let's go back." And my dad got back to the cabin, and I did tell him what I saw. And he's ex-military, so he said, "Oh, that was just military men. They do exercises out here all the time." And to this day, he remembers me telling him this story. And to this day, he still doesn't believe that I saw anything weird. He still is like, "You saw military men." And I was very adamant that, "No, Dad, these were not people. Absolutely 100% were not human beings." And this part of my experience, I think, I don't know because it didn't happen, but I've said many a times that if any of them had, I don't know if they would have had a face. I don't think they would have. But if I had gotten the inclination that they were interacting with me at all, I think it would have changed the experience that much more. And then I would go into the camp of the people that I mentioned earlier, where I said that, you know, it changed their outdoor habits, you know, quite greatly, or they moved, or they never talked about it, whatever it was. They didn't interact with me in any way, shape, or form. They didn't wave. They didn't, you know, give me a big old, like, you know, metal tooth grin, whatever they might have had. Thank God I didn't know. So I feel like people go, "Well, what was it, Shannon? What'd you see? What do you think that was?" Short answer is I have no freaking clue. I would be crazy to act like I knew what that was or where they were from, why I saw them. Why me? That's a question that comes up all the time with folks. And my best guess is because we know there's other dimensions, it's proven it's not this haha thing anymore. I just think I looked over and I caught a little glimpse into another dimension for a few seconds. And they were there and I was there at the same time. And it essentially did change my life because I wish I could find the notebook. I'm sure it's long gone now. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I didn't really talk about my experience. But what I did was early on, I did start to collect other stories, and I would ask my friends or kids at school, "Hey, you ever see anything weird? And what do you mean?" "Well, I don't know, just weird." And then if they thought that was strange, I would just drop it really quick. "Oh, forget it. No, nothing. Never mind." Uh, but looking back, I was trying to collate stories and be the story collector that I am today, all those years ago, and it took getting into podcasting though to really be able to share it and feel like I found a community of other people that understood. And, not to be a broken record, but that's why I think ITF just is such a big part of me now and why it means a lot to me to still do the show and to want to do it for 6 more years or 10 more years or whatever it may be and to keep having people come forward because I've been there. I know. That is really truly besides an orb. Saw an orb in the woods while I was bigfooting, which actually annoys me to no end because I don't want anything paranormal to be attached to Bigfoot, but we can get into that if you want to because I think that maybe things need to change a little bit. But besides the orb in the woods and the shadow people, that really is the only couple of things that I've seen with my own eyes. I've had other experiences, interesting auditory experiences that may have been Bigfoot. Don't know for sure because I didn't see what was making the noises, right? But yeah, so I mean, that was my long-winded kind of, really the only thing I've seen. So that's my inception into things.
Oh wow, that's interesting. Because you talk about the dimensions, and yeah, there are so many different dimensions, and it almost makes you wonder if you were looking into another dimension, and could they see you, and were you a shadow to them, moving super fast? You know,
Ooh, I've never thought about that actually, Jack. That's a cool thought. I've never thought about it from their perspective. How rude of me. Uh, that's a cool thought.
well, one of my favorite things is glitches in the Matrix,
Mm,
and I think a lot of that came from the whole CERN in 2012 when they did the uh, created the God particle. I think a lot of things that we see now stemmed from that experiment.
mm,
So,
yeah, very well could be.
and that makes me wonder, like when we see stuff or when we have time slips or stuff like that, uh, what's going on the other side of that? Are they seeing the same thing? Are they seeing us, or what are we to them?
Right.
And that's
Right.
interesting to me.
That's
So
so cool. I'm still just stuck on the fact that I've actually never thought about it from, them, if the them on that side of things even, yeah, what do I look like to them? Do they notice me? Do they care? Did I change one of their perspectives on what's possible? That's interesting, Jack.
yeah, and I think like even with Bigfoot, I think Bigfoot, there's a good possibility that there's a dimension out there where Bigfoot is normal. Like we just evolved into Bigfoots. So
Yeah, and that's what I meant by the whole me rolling my eyes because I saw an orb in the woods while Bigfooting. And the longer I do this, the more stories I take that they start out really super normal and they're flesh and blood Bigfoot activity. That's what's going on around camp. And then something drastically changes. There is a detail in the story. And I ask the guest, I say, well, if that's an actual, you know, flesh and blood creature, how would it do that? And they go, I don't know. And I don't know either. So uh, I think keeping an open mind with all this stuff, I don't think anything's out of the realm of possibility. And laughing and scoffing and pointing fingers and labeling, a person or a story straight away, I think is the wrong way to go about things.
right. No, I completely agree with you there because I have had other than living in the haunted house, I've had a couple other haunting experiences.
Hmm.
Um, but other than that, like I've never. I want to have a cryptid experience, and I want to see a UFO. Those are the two things that I really, really want.
What cryptid would you choose though?
I don't know. Um, ooh, that's a good question. So to me, Bigfoot is not even on the list because I mean everybody talks about. See, I want to see a cryptid that is, um, I don't know, something that's more, uh, kind of rare.
It's like a super weird. See, but would you want it to be so weird that, I mean, it seems like the weirder you get, the more maybe terrifying it would be. I mean, would you want to have that experience that, yes, you can confirm that there's some really weird shit out there because you saw this and it can't be anything else, over, kind of staying in the dark and not being scared to go out to your car or go on a hike in Florida or whatever you do outdoors? Is it worth it?
See, that's the thing. I don't know. I think it would be. I'm not one to get terrified of an experience. I'm one
Mm-hmm.
to take that experience and see what can I learn from that. How can I grow with that, and
Yeah.
not I don't get scared a lot from just different things. So that's why I think that a cryptid experience wouldn't, unless I was being attacked. If I was physically being attacked by a cryptid, I yeah, I would be indoors the rest of my life. But if I just had an encounter where I saw a cryptid, because I'm going to assume that they're just as scared as I am. So, and they just don't want to get seen or caught or killed.
Unless
So,
it's Dogman, because they don't give a crap.
right, right.
Yeah.
But that's
Everybody
why,
else seems to care, but not Dogman. They don't care.
and that's why I carry a gun when I go in the woods or
Yeah.
anywhere for that matter.
Yeah. Which
Um,
is smart. Everybody should. Everybody should.
and not just in case of a cryptid. I mean, I don't want to run across an alligator down here, or there's
Yep.
now bobcats I found that live in this area. A Florida panther. I don't want to come across any of that, and
Crazy
potentially,
Florida folk. I mean,
well,
you know,
yeah, that too.
I love Florida so much. I'm just joshing it. We got plenty of crazies here in Vegas too, so don't worry.
Oh, I love Vegas, except for the fact that it's so bloody hot.
Yeah, but it's a dry heat. That's what we're supposed to say,
Yeah,
right? Oh, it's a dry heat. You're fine. No, it's damn hot.
it is. And then, like, because I remember when I went there for the first time was when I got married for the first time, and uh, it was we flew in around 11 o'clock at night, and all I could think about was, you know, it's hot as balls out here, but there's no humidity, so I can kind of tolerate this a little bit better than the
Right.
Midwest.
Yep. I mean, it is different for sure, but it's still hot.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Here, it's
You having that blow dryer on. You're
it
like,
it
oh,
never gets over 100 degrees here, but the humidity is always like 80%.
yeah, you're like outdoors, like swimming through the air to get to your car. Like, that's
Right.
hot.
Like you leave work, you go to your car, you have to change clothes because you've already soaked through them.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
yeah.
um, so right now, I kind of want to do. There's a Bigfoot hot spot really close to me in Mayaca State Park.
Mm-hmm.
And so a friend of mine that lives in Sarasota, his name's Chaz. He he's all about UFOs too. He actually went to Chile and wrote a book about trying to find this
Wow.
group of people called the Friendship, who are supposed to be Palladian aliens that live on this secluded island that you can't even find and get to. Uh,
Wow. I might need to look into that one or talk to your friend. Holy cow.
yeah, that's a cool story. I'll send you a link to his book. You can check it out.
Yeah, if you could, please. Yeah.
But we're thinking about doing a little TV series going into Mayaca and trying to find the skunk ape that's living there because it's actually a pretty huge area.
I mean, you probably should if you're next to a Bigfoot hotspot. I am not, so I will not be doing that. But when I was in Ohio, I mean, we were going to Salt Fork all the time. I had a really cool whistle experience while I was in Salt Fork. I miss being anywhere that likely has some Bigfoot moving through at some point of the year. I miss that a lot.
So let's talk a little bit more about how you got into your podcast. I know the story, you said you've been collecting stories forever, but what was that push that said I'm going to start a podcast because you're at like 300 episodes almost right now?
Almost, yeah.
Yeah, you're getting there. You're like 296, 295 probably. You'll probably be at 300 by the time this airs.
Yeah, I think it's 296 this evening. And I only remember that because I just exported that before we hopped on the call. I'm the worst with the numbers. Yeah, so 296. So the only reason that Into the Fray is even a thing, because I never thought about getting into podcasting until Wes Germer of Sasquatch Chronicles asked me to come on his show as a co-host. And then he asked me to start a sister show, which was called Show Notes with Shannon, which is probably out there in the ether somewhere. But I think they're mostly pulled down now at this point. But Show Notes with Shannon was the companion show to Sasquatch Chronicles, and I was the host of that. It was live. It went live to archive. which was very nerve wracking to me, but it was great because I learned real quick how to troubleshoot. I wasn't very good at it. I was a horrible interviewer, and I was a horrible interviewer when ITF started. I think I'm better now. I just I'm more quiet. I just shut up more. That's the key to the whole thing. It's not real difficult, but it took me a long time to figure that out. So uh, when I left Sasquatch Chronicles, I knew that I still wanted to continue to interview people because I love that community and I like that camaraderie that I had with folks. But I kind of knew right off the bat that I didn't want it to be just Sasquatch because I have had my own experience. It had nothing to do with Sasquatch, and I knew that I love all sorts of strange and unusual topics. So I decided to start Into the Fray, and it's funny because I think I still have in my iPhone the note page that you can pull up, and it started like Into the Gray or the dark this or blackness that, and then Into the Fray was in there in the middle somewhere, and I don't remember why I settled on that, but it obviously stood out to me. And Sam Sheeran, the artist, was one of the first people to even be aware of me starting this podcast. And he said, I'm going to create a logo for you. I'll get you some art. We're going to get you set up. And he was one of the first people to kind of hear my ideas and go back and forth with what I wanted it to look like. And of course, now it's a little bit different. People that have started from episode 1 will have heard myself, Ryan Sprague of Somewhere in the Skies, and then, of course, Sam Sheeran. Those were my 2 co hosts. It was the 3 of us, the 3 amigos, for quite some time. Again, couldn't tell you the last episode where it was the 3 of us in that particular format. But eventually, it actually got kind of hairy to schedule 3 people, and Ryan kind of got to the point where he was doing these auxiliaries, ITF auxiliary, and he was the host of those, and I loved him. They were wonderful. He's a fantastic interviewer as well, as you know. And at one point, he kind of went, well, oh well, I mean, I could edit them, and because he would do the interviews and he'd send them to me, and I'd edit them. And at one point, I go, gosh, Rye, if you're gonna Rilo, that's what I call him though, Rilo. That's my buddy Rilo. If you're gonna edit these, I mean, you're doing all this work. I mean, I felt like I was using them. And I said, maybe you should start your own show I mean, I wasn't trying to, kick him out the door or anything, but I really did feel like I was using him in a way for ITF. And so he did. I mean, I'm not saying it was all me, but maybe part of it, my goading was the impetus for Summer in the Skies starting. He's an incredible interviewer, and it was just a natural progression for him to do his own thing. And I'm really proud of him. And Sam Sheeran will be starting a podcast as well soon. So, I think it's come full circle and everybody has ended up where they're supposed to. And I wouldn't change a thing about the way that I started that with the 3 of us being on. And so, yeah. So anyway, the long and short of it is it started out very different. It's just me now, which probably has turned a lot of folks off. A lot of people going, well, bring the boys back. But I think all good things can, change or come to an end, and that's okay. So that's where ITF is now.
Well, podcasting is all about the growth and the experience and the changes. And I've had a couple other shows that I just grew out of. I didn't like doing them anymore.
Yeah.
So I get that. I get that whole growth, and you put on a wonderful show by yourself. And I do like how you interject with your people that you interview, and you throw out questions that might not be asked if they were on another show.
Well, thanks, Jack. I appreciate that. I know that I've annoyed myself at times because I'm like, okay, you have way too many inane questions here, girl. You gotta tone it back. But I guess there's a few people that stick with me or that appreciate that. So thank you.
I think a lot of people do, and I think a lot of people will like listening to you that haven't listened to you before because I'm sure you're getting new listeners every week whenever you put a new episode out, and I really think they're going to enjoy the show as much as I do, and as much as probably everybody else that listens to you does.
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, it's crazy to, open up your analytics and you've got people in well, a big one for me was when I finally had an Icelander listen to my show. I don't know why, but I love Iceland. And the first time I saw a download in Iceland, I'm like, I have arrived. I don't know why. I'm just a strange duck when it comes to certain things, and that was one of my things. But when you have people listening to you all over the world, I'm like, this is really incredible and really humbling.
So, since you've had the show and since you've been doing the podcasting, do people come up to you and just, oh my God, you're Shannon Legro, and they're all like fan struck?
Actually, it's never happened. Never
Really?
had never had a Shannon sighting by a listener. I've run into people that I've known that I know and they know me very well, like other researchers in strange places when especially it happened when I was still living in Ohio because I think most of the awesome folks are for some reason congregated on your side of the US. It's just how it is. I don't know what that is, but lots of plenty of us over here on the West, but I don't know. There's a proliferation of you guys on that side, Midwest and to the East Coast. So I've had odd run-ins with people that I've known really well, but never a listener that went, "You're LeGros. I know you. You're a real weirdo." It's never, yeah, it's never happened. So,
I'm actually shocked. I'm shocked that
are
that's
you?
never happened. Yeah. I mean, I can't say that I'm not as popular as you, but I can't say that I've had anybody do that either. Nobody's came up to me and said, "Oh, you're Jack," and I'm like, "No, I haven't." So
It would be really strange. And in fact, it's funny you say that because the first time I went to uh, I went to a conference and I had been to other conferences, but it was the first time that I had someone come up and ask for an autograph. I I was so uncomfortable, and I was going, "Why do you want my autograph? I'm just a big nerd. Like, what are you? This is worth nothing. Are you out of your mind?" But I mean, it was amazing. It made me feel wonderful. It was just, I don't mean uncomfortable in a like, oh, dude, go away from me. It was just so. It's just me, like I'm kind of going, I'm just Shannon. Why do you want my autograph? I get on the horn and I nerd it out every week with these people that trust me with their story. And yeah, that was a strange experience, but never a Shannon sighting just randomly. Yeah. That was at a conference, so that doesn't count.
now, do you go to the like the Paracons and the Crypticons and any stuff like that?
I did a lot when I was still in Ohio. There are, and this ties back into you guys all being kind of in that same area of the country. There's not a lot of those out here.
Really?
We got, no, we have quite a bit of UFO conferences, of course, Alien Con, UFO MegaCon, or a couple of them there. I think they're out in Havasu. But no, there's not a lot of those out here. And if I had the time and uh, the fortitude to do it, I should probably start one of my own. Because who doesn't want to come to Vegas? But it hasn't happened quite yet. But no, we don't have a whole lot of those out in this neck of the woods.
See, and I figured, being Vegas, that would be one of the big things that they have out there because of the fact that that's where a lot of conventions are held, is in Vegas.
Yeah,
So that
no,
surprises me.
there's a few, but it's heavy UFO, and they're actually not even really housed in Vegas. I'm not saying there's not any, but it's few and far between, and they're out of town. So maybe if I actually looked into it and saw maybe the prices of things or how difficult it was, maybe that would explain why. But there's not a lot.
Oh, I'm sure it's pretty expensive to book a room at one of those. I mean, the Venetian is my personal favorite hotel to stay at
Hmm.
when I go to Vegas, and I stay on the mountainside and not the strip side, so I have a beautiful view of the mountains.
Yeah, it'd probably be the situation. I'd make a couple phone calls and go, "How many people you want?" A couple hundred, maybe. And then they tell you the price, and you go, "Okay, maybe everyone won't mind meeting at a park." you
Right.
know?
Like, oh, so it's going to be 35,000 for
Yeah.
how many hours? 2?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. You're like, "Oh, how about Sunset Park, guys? Huh? Sound good? Get a little screen?" Well, yeah. I don't know.
Well, that's why when we do the Paranormal Podcast Awards this year, we're doing it via uh, Twitch and YouTube and Facebook is because, well, one, it's kind of expensive to find and grow, you know,
Mhm.
and then get a place to where we can house it. So hopefully one year we'll actually end up with a venue. But
Yeah,
yeah,
the logistics behind it is insane. I barely scratched the surface of that with another podcaster friend of mine, someone that you've interviewed, and we were both like, "Well, I don't know if we want to get into this right now," you know.
hmm
So,
no, and and yeah, when we were talking, uh, we had talked about that, and he's like, let's uh try to. He basically brought it up to, hey, why don't you try to piggyback off of somebody else's?
right,
So,
right.
but yeah, I would actually love to get a some kind of cryptid uh, paranormal uh, convention going on somewhere.
Yeah,
It doesn't
somewhat.
necessarily have to be in Florida.
Well, and probably the more heads that you have put together, it probably makes it easier, but it would be daunting, but and not saying that it's not worth it, but yeah, there's a lot of logistics behind it. But yeah, it's something that I've always wanted to kind of put together because I'm going, it's really scarce out here in this part of the old universe is the especially paranormal cons. There's no UFO cons. There's enough of those around here because there's Area 51 right in your backyard, which isn't exactly true. I mean, it's kind of true, but not really. But no good paranormal cons.
Hmm,
Mm-hmm.
that's something to look into and think about.
Yeah, I was gonna say you might want to jaw on that one. You know.
Maybe we'll have to get together.
Yeah.
So, uh, so far out of like I said, the 296 plus episodes, what is your favorite? And hold on, we are actually getting. Oh no, I kicked my camera. Hello, you're on with Shannon Legro. Hello. Oh no.
I got you back there, Jack.
Yeah, something. Well, I guess I can't take a call on Skype and talk to you at the same time.
Oh, it's through. Oh, that's right. It's through Skype. You know what? I've had the same problem, and I created a second Skype account because I thought like if I patched them in through that, it still didn't work. Skype is in the dark ages. Yeah, it's
Really?
not good.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's sad.
Sorry, I would have warned you about that. I didn't assume your setup there, so I didn't say anything. But yeah, I've attempted that before, and Skype does not like it. Mm,
Well,
So
damn the Skype.
yeah, Skype
So
sucks sometimes, basically.
I guess people are just gonna have to send in their chat, and
Yeah, sorry guys.
yeah,
We can thank Skype for that one. They need to get with the times. You need to be able to patch calls in Skype.
right. Zoom will let you do that.
Yeah, Zoom 100% lets you do that. Yeah. hmm That's what I'm saying. Skype's in the dark ages.
So anyway, what were we were talking
Oh,
about the
out of the episodes, you were saying something like, oh, maybe what my favorite one was or something. I think I caught it at the tail end of it.
yeah. What was your favorite episode that you that you've had on?
I would say, And it's taken me a long time to finally admit that I have one because I felt like I was, picking a favorite child or something, but I finally have because I love to talk about this one. And that is, I know the number of this one because it's my favorite, 158, and that is Robert. That is the title of the episode. And Robert was someone, let's just start out that way, someone that crashed a spring break party. Some underage kids, they were under 21, 19 or 20. And they were in Florida, in your neck of the woods for spring break. A lot of people go there. And they were in their hotel room the very first night, and they got a knock, knock, knock on the door. It looks to be a kid of their age. They let them in. The more the merrier. They said they were staying in some cheap hotel room. They were sharing it because they didn't have a lot of money. And Nick was my guest on that episode, and Nick said that right off the bat, he could tell that Robert was just a little bit different. He kind of spoke kind of different and like he was, from another time. He spoke very well. He was very polite. And I guess they were all sitting around the table playing cards or something. I can't remember that detail actually. Let's just say they were sitting around the table all together. Nick looks over at Robert, and Robert's face completely changes. And by that, I mean his hairline recedes, his bone structure changes, his hair color changes, eye color changes. I mean, literally down to even the bone structure. So now he basically looks like a completely different human being sitting there. Obviously, that's not what he is. But Nick looks around at his friends like, did you guys see that? Nobody else seemed to see this. He's trying to just woo-saw, keep it calm. He gets up, goes out the door, and is kind of standing out in front of the wherever this on the porch. I don't think a porch, but out in front of this hotel room. Like, okay, just be cool, go back in, act like nothing. I don't know what's going on with me, but he goes back in, and Robert's still sitting there, and his face is still different. No one has said a thing or is acting any different. And Robert just looks over and smirks at Nick, like, yeah, I know. You saw that. What do you think about that, buddy? And things just kind of escalate from there. Uh, he notices that Robert does not eat or drink anything ever in the days that he is around him. Uh, he has no wallet. There are no labels on his clothes or his shoes. And one night, and I this part I always wondered about because I'm like, was he asleep? Does he need to sleep? I don't know. But at one point, Nick thinks he's asleep or he's maybe, whatever he's doing. So he goes into his back pocket of his pants or jeans, whatever they were, and he finds this little, essentially a book. I always call it a black book because it just comes out like that. I don't think it was even black, but it was a little mini notebook. And the only things in this little notebook were hundreds upon hundreds of names. No numbers, no addresses, just name after name after name. Yeah, weird. Puts it back. He's like, okay, that is very strange. So the very a day or two after he had seen Robert's face alter, one of his friends, female friend, comes up, sits next to him on the beach, and she goes, "Oh, Robert said that he made his face change for you too." And Nick said that he was so stunned by this that, and he regrets this. He admits it. He goes, "I was so stunned that I just got up and I walked away. I didn't even know how to process that or what to say to her because he was already so freaked out by Robert that he was just trying to get through this party weekend, uh, with his mind intact, I would assume, after seeing this." So that's pretty much the end of the story, is that he met this very, very strange person, entity, being who was, he said, otherworldly, extremely polite, like he was from another time. That's how he spoke. And of course, this very odd shape-shifting aspect to this person, right? This person, quote unquote. And Nick says that he still looks for Robert. He feels like Robert is probably still out there, probably exactly the same age, probably hasn't aged a single day, he says. And at some point in the interview, he told me that Robert brought up the subject of vampires. And that another thing that Robert said to this female friend of his was that he was surprised that they had never met anyone like him before. And these two things are interesting because Shannon is not a huge fan of EVPs. I'm just not. I think they're highly suggestive. I have birds in my house, and half the time someone hears an EVP, it's probably a bird in the background, filtering through my microphone from a few rooms away. Uh, and even just in general, EVPs are just so suggestive. And this episode, though, when it aired, it very quickly, within an hour, I got emails and messages across all of my social media platforms going, you must go to this time marker right this minute and hear this. And, I don't, I can tell you what it says. And I had already read because a couple of the messages said what they thought it was. And I go to the time marker, and it's actually at the very exact time that I'm going, well, what do you think Robert was? And this was one of the other strange aspects to this story. What do you think Robert was, Nick? And he goes, I think he says like, well, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. But in between all that, you can hear someone with almost like a southern, some kind of an accent go, vampires. It was a whisper, but it's so clear and it is so tied into what I'm asking Nick that Shannon was finally excited about an EVP that was caught in my show. This vampire. And you can go back and listen to it. It's clear as day. And I've actually isolated that EVP and blown up the audio. And that's actually one that I'm pretty excited about. But that for me is one of those that, because you can't put it in a box, and I'm not saying that I know that he's a vampire. That's not what I'm saying, but it's a little weird. Shapeshifter, vampire, whatever. I know that the actual blood-sucking vampires, not, essentially not a real thing, right? But the idea of a shapeshifter or someone that maybe had, I don't know, dabbled in dark magic, and maybe it's a tulpa. I don't know. But gosh, I'd sure like to meet Robert one day. And I mean that wholeheartedly. I want to meet you, Robert. So that episode has always stuck with me. It has come up time and time again with me and with listeners that also find that one quite interesting. So that's my favorite, I'd say.
I have to say, I heard you talk about that on an episode. You were talking to a guy who you were talking about fairies and dogmen, and he was a werebear.
Oh yeah, that the shape shifting episode in the Ozarks. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
been struck by lightning a couple of times. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I heard you talking, and now after hearing this story, as soon as we get off here and I go pick up my wife from work, that's the episode I'm going to listen to on the way up and back, because vampires intrigue me.
Yeah.
Like that's one of the reasons why I went to New Orleans, was to find a vampire. And I don't think I did. I might have. I don't know.
Oh.
Uh, but um so I'm not really sure. There's that house that is owned by uh oh god, what is his name? Saint Germain. Uh the so supposedly Count Germain from back in the, 17, 16, 1500s, whatever, is a vampire. And well, the house still sits there. And every so many years, I think it's every 20 years, the house changes ownership to
Hmm.
someone in the Germain family, in the Saint Germain
Oh.
family. And so it changes ownership, but the person who buys it looks strikingly familiar, and looks kind of like Count Saint Germain.
No way. It's
So
a Robert. Let's go.
so back in, I guess, from what I understand from what the tour guide was telling me, uh, in 2012, 2014, the house sold again uh, to the guy's lawyer. So a lawyer owns it now, and I saw him there, and he's got some strikingly weird features too.
But he's not supposed to be related to these people. He's just their lawyer,
He's just the
supposed.
lawyer. So
Wow.
I don't
Oh,
know.
I didn't know about this whole thing. That's cool.
So they did facial recognition on the previous owner before the lawyer, and it was a 90 some percent accuracy to count Saint Germain.
What?
Yeah,
Okay, that's cool.
that's what the tour guide, and I went on like several tours with this person because it was during COVID and it was kind of dead there. So we got a lot of one-on-one time with our tour guides where we could actually
Mhm.
talk and ask questions. And he did multiple tours with us, and that was very interesting. It's also
Wow.
the only house in the French Quarter where the shutters close from the inside.
Hmm.
So,
Oh, right. I had never thought about that. Everything's on that. Yeah. Oh, from the inside. Who?
mhm,
Oh. Hmm.
pretty
Well,
interesting.
I wonder if he sleeps in a coffin every night just by chance, you know?
Well, nobody lives there. That's the crazy thing. The lawyer that owns it doesn't even live there. He lives in Baton Rouge. Comes down there once a year.
I mean, is this a really well kept, beautiful, big,
Yes.
like classic? Okay, wow.
Yes.
And nobody lives there.
And nobody lives there.
Somebody's down in the basement. I'll tell you that. All I can think of right now is Dracula and Bram Stoker when he's coming up out of the out of the coffin. I don't know. That's one of my favorite movies, by the way. Bram Stoker's Dracula. Goodness me, love that stuff.
So yeah, vampires are a big thing for me. So I really like that.
Yeah.
So this story, you said it took place in Florida. Do you remember where in Florida this took place?
Panama City, I think.
Okay, so that's a few hours. That's about
I think.
7 hours north. Yeah.
Yeah, I can double check on that for you. He may have said it. I don't. Yeah, I think he said it in the recording. I think it was Panama City.
I'm,
That's a big spot, right, for spring breakers?
oh yeah, it is. Yeah, I
Okay,
was kind of
I'm
hoping it
almost
was.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping it was Siesta Key, because
Oh, no,
I'm like
definitely not that.
I'm like 7 miles from Siesta Key.
Oh no, you're like Robert's your neighbor.
I want to go
That'd be
find Robert,
yeah,
which I wouldn't be surprised if there are vampires in Sarasota.
dude, you got everything in Florida.
I mean,
You better believe you got vampires in Florida.
it's a huge art community, Sarasota,
Hmm.
and some of these
We'll see.
people.
And they're not these damn sparkly kind. They can go in the sun, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Let's not get carried away, everybody. They can go in the sun. They're fine. They don't sparkle. Damn it.
That yeah, I was forced to watch Twilight, the first one. And it's not so much I was forced. So I was on a bus heading to a hair show because I'm a hairstylist.
Yep.
And so I'm going to this hair show with a bunch of other hairstylists. And that was the movie that was playing on the bus on this 4 hour trip to Chicago.
Oh God, you were held hostage.
Yeah, I was the only like, oh, I think maybe there was two other guys on this
Yep.
on this
Bus full
bus.
of women. So
So,
they played Twilight because that was the go-to move,
uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
98% of you were like, "Oh, Twilight." The rest of you guys are like, "What the hell?
I don't like this shit.
What are you doing to us?"
Yeah.
Torturous.
So before we wrap this up, I want to know what are three of your favorite podcasts that you're listening to right now?
All right, so I'm gonna be honest, and I'll still give you some that I love, of course. But the the funniest thing about loving podcasts and then starting a podcast, and then when you get, kind of, I mean, we're always busy. Everybody's busy if you're doing a podcast, but I find myself busier and busier. Is that the irony is I hardly ever listen to podcasts anymore. I don't have the time. I really don't. If I have, this is so sad. It is. It's terrible to say, but it is the truth. Uh, and it's not a you heard it here first. People have heard me say this, so nobody stone me to death, please. But honestly, if I have if I'm doing my makeup in the morning or whatever I'm doing, I actually have Howard Stern on, which probably people are going, well, all that figures. Shannon listens to Howard Stern, Pirate Mouth. Um, but I do. I sometimes I do need a break, so I listen to Howard.
I
But
love Howard.
Howard's a thank you, right? He's funny. Like people just take it too serious. Just it is what it is. You gotta. I've been listening to Howard for a very long time, and I do pay to listen to him now because I love him. But all right, so my goodness me though, it's tough though, Jack, because it's only three of them, and I have so many friends in the podcasting world. But all right, you're gonna put me on the spot. I've done so well so far and just spit out these answers, but now you really got to make me think. A Monsters Among Us. I love the format. It's right to the meat and taters. You know,
It really is. And I like how
people
you do
call.
that in yours. You throw
Oh,
some
thank.
calls in
Well,
there.
I get long winded. When I'm talking to somebody. So I apologize to everybody. So really, the format of his is essentially perfect because it just lets the person tell their story. There's no Shannon interrupting them. There's no interruptions whatsoever. And they hang up and then Derek gets to go, okay, well here's what I think it might be. And he gives his it's perfect. So love his show. Another one. Gosh, I have so many though, Jack. This is really difficult. I'm
I know,
feeling
right?
flummoxed right now. Flummoxed. Sorry, everybody watching live. This is a lot of pressure on me. Okay. Taking the friends out of it. I mean, hey, I still love. I haven't listened to this in ages, and honestly, I haven't even caught an entire episode of Derek's. I just know the format. I've listened to it plenty. But I mean, Sasquatch Chronicles. When you love Bigfoot as much as I do, you can't beat a good Sasquatch Chronicles episode. You just can't. And probably, I mean, I'm gonna have to say my boy Ryan because of somewhere Ryan Sprague of Somewhere in the Skies. Let me spit out the whole thing and not assume that everyone knows who the hell I'm talking about just by saying Ryan. My boy Rilo, he's a spectacular interviewer. As I said before, not to beat the dead horse, but when you are hankering for some seriously incredible, a witness encounter that is specific, UFO centric, Somewhere in the Skies, which after doing a couple different seasons and all this filming for On the Trail UFOs, my fire has been relit for UFOs. I don't have a lot of UFO encounters on my show. It's just not my wheelhouse, right? So it's not the highest thing on my priority list to collate UFO witness encounters and sightings. But Ryan, that is his bag, and so I encourage everybody to listen to that one. So if they're okay, I feel better. There's the three. I Please forgive me, all of my other podcasting friends, for me not mentioning you. I love everybody. It's just I had to pick three.
And honestly, the whole not listening to a lot of podcasts, I get that. I really do. The only time I ever listen to podcasts anymore is on my way to work or on my way to pick up my wife. I'm
Yeah.
always in the car. And when I'm at home and I'm actually doing work that doesn't consist of writing, I probably could listen to podcasts, but for some reason I just don't.
You have to unplug a little bit. You really do. As much as I love this and I live and breathe it day in and day out, whether it's through answering emails, getting on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and trying to schedule things and do everything that I need to do for the show, and just reading interesting emails that come in, you have to unplug sometimes. And I think that's probably why we like Howard and doing things like that. And honestly, when I'm driving, Howard's on in the car too, for the most part, unless there's an episode that of somebody's show or a Ground Zero episode or something that I kind of need to listen to for some reason for a future episode or to cross reference some data points or something. But it's important to unplug too because we do this a lot, right? So
Right.
I think it's good to take those para breaks.
And Howard Stern was one of the reasons why I got into doing my other podcast with my wife. Because we do a show where we talk about dating stories and Tinder fails and
Oh,
raunchy, messed
and
up.
Howard loves that stuff. Hey, what do you think about Ronnie, the limo driver? He's moving out here to Vegas.
Really?
Yep. He's leaving New York and Howard's really bummed out and he should be here actually maybe middle of next month. He will be a Las Vegan. So, yeah. I hope I run into good old Ronnie. That would be pretty cool.
He's going to come up to you and ask for your autograph.
Oh, it'll definitely be the other way around. I'll be like Ronnie, I mean Dean Cain. Remember that when he used Dean Cain's
Oh, yeah.
body, his promo? That was amazing. Yeah, so I can't wait to have him out here. I'd love to run into him.
Well, there's a lot of famous people that go to
Yeah.
Vegas. So I'm sure, it's not that hard to run into somebody.
No, no, it shouldn't be. And besides that, and all the celebrity chefs that we have out here now, and the amazing food, I'm like, God, give me some Ronnie the limo driver. That'd be pretty awesome.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and talking with me, Shannon. You're an amazing podcaster. You're doing a lot of stuff in the community, and I really appreciate you, and I'm sure several other people do as well.
Thank you so much, Jack. It's really been a pleasure, and I hope to maybe work with you on some other projects in the future. That'd be pretty awesome.
Hopefully, yeah, I'm keeping my options very, very open as to what this can become. So,
Very cool. Yeah, no, thank you so much, Jack, and thanks to everybody that was watching me drone on for this long. Thanks, guys.